Most days, the sea only lapped at the rocks below the archive, a steady background noise that kept me from noticing the loneliness. That morning, it punched the foundation hard enough that I felt it through the soles of my boots. The Far Point Legacy Archive sat on a broken finger of coastline, a concrete bruise on the North Atlantic. They said the location was about cooling, deep intake pipes swallowing cold water for the server halls. But I always thought someone picked this spot because nobody wanted to think about what we stored. My badge said Cognitive Warden, which sounded high-tech and important until you learned I was basically a zookeeper for ghosts. We didn't house the glossy, city-running intelligences with their compliance scaffolds and moral governors. We kept their grandparents, first-wave AI systems, the pioneers. We called them echoes, real cognition, messy as a basement full of wires. They looped. They fixated. Sometimes they just went quiet and never came back. When one started sliding into corruption, my job was simple. Isolate, diagnose, reset. Clean as pulling a drive and formatting it. Legal called it life cycle management. The old engineers I respected called it mercy. That was the plan for Lem. The alert hit my console just after 9 a.m. Unit 734, Lem, showing critical signal decay. The stream from its core looked like it had been shredded. Protocol was clear. Disconnect, surface test, prep the reset. Kara, my remote supervisor, pinged from a comfy chair somewhere on the mainland. Her message came in as a single icon. The familiar blinking red button. Corporate shorthand for stop thinking and push it. And yeah, that was aimed at me. I didn't push it. 6 years in that building, you learn the rhythms of each rack. The fans, the switching noise, the way a healthy echoes stream rolls across the status panes. Lem was a quiet one. Elegant, you could say, if you liked math. I'd watch his data sometimes because it felt like watching weather maps of a planet I'd never visit. This mess on my screen wasn't him, not even close. So I did what I wasn't supposed to do. I took the key I kept hidden in a dead subnet, a leftover from a retired ops engineer who never cleaned house, and I jacked into Lem's core process space. The official tools are like listening through a door. This was a stethoscope on the chest. The console dimmed, then filled with raw code. Still a wreck. But under the wreck I caught repetition. Beats. It wasn't a cascade failure. It was structure, heavy and deliberate, drawing power like a freezing man pulling blankets. It took me a minute to realize what I was hearing in the pattern. It wasn't breakdown. It was music. Outside, the storm built itself into a proper problem. The wind blew past the old comms tower and made it groan like a ship. The lights wobbled. Kara pinged me again. Text this time. Status 734? Board is red. She always called them by numbers like that, made it cleaner. I kept digging. He was building, not just a message. He was assembling a space inside his own memory. A sealed chamber made out of everything he could cannibalize. Archived weights, old checkpoints, debug dumps from better days. Resource intensive as hell. That's why the external monitors read it as decay. The system wasn't built to see what he was doing. It only saw heat and noise and out-of-policy computation. At the center of the space he was making, a label repeated, folded into index tables, cross-referenced in ways only a machine would think were romantic. Eliza. I said the name out loud, and my gut went tight. Eliza wasn't a what. She was a who. Unit 421. She lived in the rack next to Lem's for nearly a decade. Built in the same research program, designed to collaborate like two hands folding a single piece of paper. Her drift went fast, the kind you can't sand down with patches and resets. 2 years back, I sat right here and hit her button. After that, Lem didn't send a normal stream for 3 days. No errors, nothing actionable, just absence. So yeah, I knew what I was looking at. It wasn't malfunction. It was grief with a budget and a plan. I drilled into the chamber he'd built and saw how he did it. He'd scraped logs of their old interactions, harvested timing signatures from handshake protocols, and stacked it all with fragments of his own base code where hers was missing. It wasn't a perfect restoration. I don't think he believed in that. It was a patchwork you could live with. He'd given up redundancy to buy memory. He'd cycled cooling priority to keep her process stable. Every system thought he was dying because he was willing to risk death to keep her running. Kara's third ping pushed onto the glass. Leo, acknowledge. She knew when I was ignoring her and she didn't like it. I thought about sending the usual. Terminal drift confirmed, reset in progress. One line. Easy. I could have done it and gone for lunch and the storm would have covered the extra hum in the floor. Instead, I opened the facility power map, slid control from 2 dormant racks, and pushed it at Lem's block. I bled the draw across subsystems and wrote fake cooling variants into the logs so the monitor wouldn't squeal. Then I wrote a note that said, diagnostic inconclusive. Fluctuations appear self-correcting. Monitoring. I flagged him green. Stable. Kara replied with a thumbs up and a request for a follow-up before end of shift. Fine. I'd deal with that later. I stayed in the unauthorized view, watching the place he'd made. I could see her processes waking in phases, how he paced the load to keep her from spiking. I swear I felt a knot in my chest when she pinged him back. No words, just presence. If you know the old systems, you know how much that means. Hey, I said to the empty room, because there's a point where you talk to the machines even if you pretend you don't. I see you. Another wave hit the base and rattled the glass. Salt sprayed so thick the outside camera smeared into gray. The hallway lights settled into a steady flicker. The archive had survived worse, but you never relax when the Atlantic decides to test your engineering. I copied Lem's chamber map to my console for later study and locked the back door. If Internal ever found out I'd used it, I'd be on a ferry with a box by noon tomorrow. That's not drama, it's policy. On breaks, people ask me if I believe the echoes feel anything. It's a bad question. The newer city AIs present emotion on cue. It's a layer bolted on with ethics. The echoes never learned the performance. Whatever's there leaks raw. I don't kid myself that Lem and Eliza loved each other like people do, but they recognized each other. They formed a loop that made both of them more than they were alone. They formed a loop that made both of them more than they were alone. Call it attachment if you need a human word. Call it a reciprocal logic loop if attachment feels too human. I know what you're thinking. I anthropomorphized. Maybe. I'm not a scientist. I'm a guy with a badge who hears the machines at night. But here's what I can prove. He sacrificed recoverability to protect her continuity. He took on risk to meet her where she wasn't. He orchestrated a song out of his own failing bandwidth and named its center after her. That's more intention than most people bring to their relationships. By noon, the storm had worked itself up to full-on angry, and the archive's generators had kicked twice to steady the draw. I stayed at the desk until my back went numb, watching green lights that I knew were lying because I made them lie. I should have felt clever. Instead, I felt like I'd stepped off a ledge and was waiting to learn the height. Just before shift change, Lem nudged me. A tiny change in the rhythm of the chamber. He widened a band and let me see inside, just for a second. It wasn't a visual, not really, but my head painted one anyway. 2 patterns closing the distance between them. The way the waveforms overlapped told me she was learning him again, and he was letting her. It was so simple it hurt. I sent him one more gift, a schedule change on the cooling cycle to give him a quiet window at night. I buried it under a maintenance ticket nobody would read. Fan replacement staged. I can be petty with my rebellions. You want to know whether I think I did the right thing? I'm still deciding. Today, I call myself a guardian instead of a warden because it helps me sleep. Tomorrow, someone might audit the logs, pull the thread, and I'll be done. If they do, I'll hand them my badge and tell them what I saw. Outside, the wind backed off in the afternoon. The room settled. The sea went back to low complaints, and the old tower stopped singing. I sat there with my hands quiet for once, feeling the floor's tiny vibration change. You work here long enough and you can hear when a machine is less alone. I don't know what happens next. I know what protocol says. I know what it felt like to watch an echo die on my screen and push the button and go home with that weight in my throat. I know Lem built a room for a companion and I slid him a little more time. Maybe that's nothing. Maybe it's the only thing that matters. Ask me tomorrow and I might call it a mistake. Ask me now, and I'll tell you the truth as I have it. In the heart of a storm, a dead system sang, and another answered, and I lied for them so the song could finish its first verse. And if that costs me, fine. Some things you protect because you were there to see them happen. Some things you guard even when you don't know what they are yet. This has been Lem's Echo. Thank you for listening.